beautiful voices. I want you to just take a second, settle in, take a nice deep breath, and join me for a profoundly moving piece of history. You know, when we look back at the autumn of 1943, much of Europe had been completely swallowed by the darkness of war and persecution. It's a heavy history to look at. Yet, in one small country, a very, very different kind of story was unfolding. Today, we're exploring a moment in time that perfectly captures the immense, undeniable power of collective kindness. This is the story of Denmark's Great Sea Rescue. And what I love about this is that it's a narrative told not through the lens of destruction, but through the warmth of profound, unwavering human decency. Not one hero, an entire nation. Think about that phrase for a second, because it really is the beating heart of our journey today. When we usually hear historical tales of rescue, we're kind of conditioned to look for a single shining savior, right? A lone figure who steps into the light against all odds. But what we're about to dive into is entirely different. And honestly, I think it's even more beautiful. This is the story of thousands of ordinary people. We're talking about people with everyday jobs, everyday families, and everyday fears who just woke up one morning and collectively chose humanity over terror. Section 1. A secret is leaked. To truly grasp the magnitude of this kindness, we have to step back into the chilling autumn air of late September 1943. A really dark, looming threat was casting a shadow over Denmark's Jewish population, which was roughly 7,800 people at the time. But then, something incredible happened. A German maritime attaché named George Duckwitz made a life-altering, absolutely treasonous decision, driven entirely by his own conscience. He leaked a devastating secret to Danish officials. The plan was that Nazi Germany was finalizing an operation to round up and deport every Jewish man, woman, and child in the country. And the cruelty of the timing here was very deliberate. These sudden raids were scheduled for the night of October 1st into the morning of the 2nd. This was meticulously timed to coincide with the Jewish high holy day of Rosh Hashanah, knowing families would be gathered together at home. So, literally overnight, the clock was ticking. Countless lives hung in the balance of just a few precious hours. The warning spreads fast. Now, you might expect this terrifying sudden news to cause total paralysis, right? But it didn't. The Danish people didn't freeze in panic or retreat behind locked doors. Instead, it sparked this immediate, beautiful mobilization of care. Just imagine the quiet whispers in the cobblestone streets. Picture the urgent hush knocks on doors in the middle of the night. The warning spread like wildfire through synagogues. It moved seamlessly right into resistance networks, and it passed from neighbor to neighbor entirely by word of mouth. Within mere days, ordinary citizens transformed their peaceful, quiet communities into a nationwide rescue operation. It was as if an entire country just leaned in and whispered, "You are not safe, but we're going to hide you." And a huge part of this incredible response was galvanized by the absolute moral clarity of the community's leaders. The local clergy sounded the alarm with total certainty. The Bishop of Copenhagen even drafted a pastoral letter that was rapidly distributed and read aloud right from the pulpits of churches nationwide. But here is the fascinating part. They didn't frame the protection of their neighbors as some sort of political stance or national duty. Not at all. They framed it entirely as a moral, spiritual imperative. It was a deeply human call to action. The message was simply, these are our neighbors, they are in danger, and we absolutely must protect them. There was no debate, just grace. Strangers opened their homes. I am always so deeply moved by what the medical community did during this time. I mean, healing hands literally became hiding hands. At places like Bispebjerg Hospital in Copenhagen, doctors, nurses, the entire staff just stepped up immediately, risking everything. Hundreds of Jewish families were brought in through those hospital doors and admitted under completely false medical diagnoses. The medical staff meticulously maintained these fake records, changing names, swapping charts, all to keep these families completely out of sight during the scheduled roundups. So underneath the smell of antiseptic and the quiet tension of the hospital wards, this invisible fortress of protection was being built. And way beyond the hospital walls, everyday citizens acted with just this profound, enveloping warmth. Danes, who had never even spoken to their Jewish neighbors before, just took them in without a second thought. They opened their front doors to total strangers, providing hot meals and safe houses. Then, under the heavy, dark cover of night, they gently guided these families out toward the if you try to picture the dark, damp forests and the freezing October nights. Imagine the sheer terror of the patrols, countered only by the calming, steady presence of a stranger holding your hand, leading you from one safe house to the next. It was a continuous, unbreakable chain of human kindness, pulling thousands of people toward the water, which brings us to the climax, the Great Sea Rescue. That water is where we find the dramatic, yet incredibly quiet, peak of our story. Over the following weeks, the freezing cold waters of the Øresund Strait, which is the narrow body of water between Denmark and neutral Sweden, became this fragile pathway to life. Small local fishing boats, vessels usually just meant for the simple daily catch, were quietly repurposed. They were used to ferry Jewish refugees across the dark, choppy waters to safety. The refugees were hidden incredibly carefully below the wooden decks, just tucked away among heavy, wet fishing nets and cargo. You can almost feel that cold October sea spray, smell the thick scent of tar, and hear the terrified, absolute silence of families holding their breath in the dark as they literally slipped right past German patrol boats. Now, this miraculous escape wasn't just some chaotic scramble in the dark. The Danish resistance lovingly and meticulously organized these spontaneous impulses of kindness into a highly effective operation. They mapped out the safe routes, they secured the covert hiding places along the shore, and they managed the precise, dangerous timing needed to make these crossings actually work. And behind the scenes, ordinary Danes secretly raised massive amounts of money. People were donating their own life savings to ensure the resistance had the funds required to orchestrate an evacuation on this unbelievable scale. It was just total, unified, national support. We absolutely have to pause on the fishermen themselves here, because their actions speak volumes about the resilience of the human spirit. The fishermen who made these crossings risked their own lives and the lives of their families every single time their boats left the shore. Yet many of them completely refused payment. Let that sink in for a second. They refused. Others asked only for exactly enough to cover the actual cost of the boat's fuel. In a moment of extreme desperation, where they so easily could have profited from the terror of others, they chose selfless solidarity instead. It was a pure, undeniable moment of grace. Section 4. A nation of heroes. The results of this collective embrace are absolutely staggering to behold. Out of Denmark's entire Jewish population, roughly 7,200 people were safely evacuated across the water to Sweden. Because of the immediate, unified, and loving efforts of an entire nation acting as one, fewer than 500 were captured. Thousands of lives, and indeed entire generations that followed them, were allowed to continue simply because ordinary people looked at cruelty and firmly said, "No, not here." And for those fewer than 500 who were tragically captured and sent to the Theresienstadt camp, Denmark still didn't abandon them. That shield of care extended even into the darkest of places. Danish authorities relentlessly and continuously pressured German officials on behalf of their citizens. Actually, this unwavering advocacy forced the Nazis to allow the Danish Red Cross to inspect their Theresienstadt. And that was a critical intervention that prevented the Danish Jews from being deported further into extermination camps. Because their home country never stopped fighting for them, the vast majority of those captured survived to see the end of the war. History leaves us with this ultimate, beautiful takeaway about human decency. When we strip away the dates, the geography, the whole shebang, the core of this story is this: it was fishermen, it was doctors, it was priests, and it was total strangers, all moving in exactly the same direction, overnight, choosing to protect people they largely didn't know, at real risk to themselves, for little or no reward. They didn't do it for glory. They didn't do it for a medal or recognition. They did it simply because it was the right, humane thing to do. Knowing that thousands of strangers can seamlessly unite overnight, braving the freezing cold and the dark to shield their neighbors from harm, it really makes you stop and wonder, what are we capable of when we choose humanity together? Thank you so much for joining me for today's story. I really hope this quiet, powerful story of collective kindness brings a little bit of light to your day and stays with you long after you leave. Stay with beautiful voices.